Hi, this is Dave, and before we get to the show, I wanted to ask you a favor. One of our goals this year is to grow the show so that What Does Star Wars Mean to You reaches more listeners. And that's where we're asking you for help. And it's really easy. Wherever you listen to us, please hit that subscribe button. If you're liking the show, give us a 5-star rating and review on the platform you listen to us. We make a lot of fun of the algorithm and the smash that button thing, but it really does help us get noticed by new fans. And if you want to join in on the conversation, find us on social at Star Wars Mean to You. That's Star Wars Mean, the number 2 in the letter U. Now, let's chat some Star Wars.
Hello there, this is Elora, and I'm a prequel trilogy kid.
And this is Dave, and I'm an original trilogy kid. And you're listening to What Does Star Wars Mean to You? The show where we talk to all kinds of fans of the franchise, from industry insiders to indie artists, from obsessive mythologists to mega collectors, all for one goal: to take the hate out of the debate by focusing on one fan at a time, to find out, what does Star Wars mean to you? Plus, it's just fun to chat Star Wars.
Welcome to our episode between episodes, otherwise known as our mini-sode, which is usually not so mini. It's actually often the same length as our interviews.
Maybe we should start calling it the standard sode.
Yeah, it's just
regular sode.
This is the episode between interviews. Yeah. This is where we talk about our favorite aspects of our guest interviews, and we kind of deep dive on whatever else is on our minds. Wow, I did not stick the landing on that. That's okay. We're going to roll into the Holocron recap, which is where Dave and I talk about our favorite moments from the interview. I'm going to shut up. Dave, what was your favorite moment from our interview with Mark Newbold?
So last week we had Mark Newbold, who is the editor-in-chief of Fantha Tracks. He's done interviews for Star Wars Insider. He's like, he's kind of like a fan journalist. And he's turned his fandom into journalism for Star Wars, which is really impressive.
Oh, yeah. He was a great guest. His interview was like so multi-layered and also like heartwarming and fabulous and inspiring.
And I think he has a great view on Star Wars. One of the things I really liked was, and this is actually a topic that I fight with about being a collector. When he admits that he's never stopped collecting and may need help, he actually goes, I may need help. And I think that's the way all collectors feel. I'm not 100% sure if that's true. That's how I feel. And it's not necessarily that I need help, more as like, do I need all of this? And
for those not on video with us, Dave just like waved his hand over his large collection on the shelving behind him in his office.
My shelf of Dave behind me. And it's mostly Star Wars.
It's predominantly Star Wars.
Yeah. But at the same time, I'm kind of like, yes, I do. And as you get older, I think you start questioning, like, what do I need to drag around the world in my life? And so when he said that, it just felt like a kinship to me.
Yeah. If I remember correctly, too, I feel like we circled around that, like, you know, these are items that might seem frivolous or unnecessary to others, but that, like, if it brings you joy, like, what is the harm?
Yes.
Who are you hurting? Like, if you love to collect and you have it on display. I mean, I have my own shelf back here, which has mostly Star Wars, but other items as well. And it's only like a fraction because I'm in a very like temporary living space right now. So most of my stuff is in storage. If you actually saw everything I collect in the back here, like I would be having the same thought, like, oh God, like what have I done? But like,
is this, are we creating like altars to ourselves? Like, is this like a tribute to myself? I think so. I mean, I called it the Shelf of Dave. So yes.
You did call it the Shelf of Dave.
Wow.
Yeah. This kind of rolls into one of my favorite aspects of the interview, which is like, honestly, and this might be a total cop-out, but like basically the entire thing. And because it was like...
Whenever someone says, the entire thing, it's a cop-out. I'm sorry.
It's a total cop-out, but it is. I'll own it. It was the passion for what he does.
Yes.
Like, I just love that he has... like the love he has for Star Wars, the story, and the thoughtfulness, the care that he puts into his work as a reporter, as a journalist, as a writer. And also, like, the way he talked about his interactions with writers for the series, actors, voice actors within the franchise, like, how respectfully he spoke about the, like, dream fan interactions that he has had. Like, it would have any fan crashing out with jealousy. It had me crashing out with jealousy. But he spoke about it with such, like, care, and, like, also there was just this tone of, like, yeah, I can't believe it either.
Yes.
Man. I hit the fucking lottery.
A joy. And, there was, like, a pure joy that was above everything that he possessed.
Yeah. And there's this, like, I wrote this in the notes. There's this trope online right now on, like, TikTok, because I am chronically online. It's a problem. That the Gen Zers have, and they say it into, like, regards to, like, mostly celebrity. Like, if someone's really, like, kind of just demonstrating how good of a person they are, or having, like, a lovely fan interaction, something like that. Like, usually the comment section will just be, like, inundated with, quote, like, we made the right person.
Oh, yes. Okay, yes.
And I couldn't help but think that when we were talking to Mark Newbold, that, like, no one made Mark Newbold famous, but, like, damn, the right person got that luck.
Yes.
Like, he deserved that luck.
Yes.
Like, that's what I ended up walking away with. Yeah.
Totally agree.
How about what else?
One of the things is, I think I kind of stole this idea from you.
That's okay.
But is his resourcefulness. Like, he feels very self-propelled. And also, I always admire people who can hear a problem and just go, yes. Like, he gave us an example of, he had the opportunity to talk to the actor who played Bosk, and it's Alan something. I'm
Alan Harris.
Alan Harris, thank you. And had the 4 p.m. deadline, or like some deadline, like, and this was
like same day.
Yeah, it was same day. So I think he had to talk to him, write it up, and get it to the editor in the same day, and he did it. And I just, like I said, whenever anyone can enter a problem and just go, yes, I'm always impressed, because that's not my initial thought ever. Like, I like, if I carried around a sign that had one word on it that was predominantly what's in my head, it would be a sign that says no. And if people walking up to me, no. People giving me a call? No. Emails? No.
You don't prescribe to yes and of improv?
No, I prescribe to no and shut up.
Yeah. No, I you said you stole it from me, but you didn't. We were both circling the same topic when we were talking about this episode, that, like, that really stood out to us both. Like, he told this hilarious story, and it was hilarious because it was just like, it was such a Devil Wears Prada. Like, he got the Harry Potter manuscript same day.
Yes.
And it was just like the chutzpah, the resourcefulness, the energy you have to go into a situation like that with to accomplish the end goal. I think it's a good lesson for life, and it's something that I want to try to better emulate in my own life when I'm approaching problems. Yeah.
Well, just I was saying he has, like, this layer of joy that kind of is predominantly over everything he's doing or talking about. And yes, I know he has bad days. I know he may swear a lot.
He doesn't always get the interview.
Yeah. But just that kind of pure joy energy and that positivity is something to be admired. And I would like to try to emulate it a little bit more as a fan.
Well, speaking of as a fan, should we roll into, what Star Wars meant to Mark?
Yes, let's do it. At the end of every interview, our final question always is, after talking about all this stuff, what does Star Wars mean to you? His answer was really, really great, and I'm going to play it right now. Should I say roll the tape?
Roll the tape.
I've been into a lot of things in my life. I mentioned the comics and Trek, and I'm a heavy metal fan. I'm a big Iron Maiden fan. But I honestly can't at this point. I don't think I've ever tried not to. I can't imagine Star Wars not being in there somewhere to varying degrees. And some days there's more and some days there's less.
I think it's important to note that is just a very, very small snippet of a long monologue that Mark gave us.
Yes.
I felt like we should only pull out, like, the most kind of, like, thesis element of it. And you should go and listen if you haven't already, because the narrative that he weaves is really great. But it really came down to that like he just can't imagine Star Wars not being there.
Yeah, and I think it's an interesting thing to try to do, exercise. I think it's an interesting exercise trying to imagine Star Wars not being there. I think it's a lot like trying to imagine death. And it doesn't necessarily have to be Star Wars. I'm not saying no Star Wars is equal to death. What I'm saying is, like, whatever you might be a fan of, it could be Star Trek, it could be ice skating, whatever you're a super fan of, try imagining it not being there. And I think it's very hard. And it speaks to something that has become part of your identity.
Yeah, totally. I loved how unapologetically he was like, yeah, this is my life and that's what it means to me. And I was like, fuck yeah, Mark. Like, it's just like, he's like, some days it dominates, some days it doesn't. But like, as part of his response, he told a funny story about how he was even posting on the website, like right before his wedding. And like, that's how interwoven Star Wars has been to his life. And there was like zero apology for that.
Yes.
And that was refreshing.
And he wasn't manic about it either. He was just like, oh, I have to do this. And this is part of what, he's very level-headed about his fandom, which I find impressive as well. Like, I never felt once like I could start an argument with him about Star Wars because he understands where it lives within his own life and is able to relate to it in a healthy way, which is something I will never understand.
I really like what you just said, though, about it's like anything that and we're using the word fan, but like anything that kind of, you know, is a huge part of your life. I mean, he is also a writer and a journalist. Yes, it's all a little bit more focused in the Star Wars universe, but like at the end of the day, he is a creative. He is a seeker of truth. He's a seeker of information. He's an interviewer. He enjoys like, you know, the conversation with people. You know, you mentioned like, I think you said ice skating. Like, yeah, like whatever it is that you're a fan of, whether it's your sport, whether it's your ideology, whatever it's like, you know, your quote unquote like fandom, how it's, you know, more stereotypically used as the word. You know, I think about my husband's chiropractor and a yoga teacher, and he is just constantly stretching. Like, if he has a free moment, he is on the ground stretching. Like, if you took that away from him, what would that do to his identity?
Yes.
The act of kind of like how you express that fandom is really no different than anyone else that has a hobby or a practice or a theology that they subscribe to.
Exactly. I try to stay focused on Star Wars for this show. But in real life, I have a lot of different, and you do too, I have a lot of different interests. And I really appreciated in Mark that he had a lot of different interests too. And he talked about them. Like, he's a big Marvel Comics fan. He's a big Star Trek fan. He's a big Star Wars fan. And to me, the most surprising was he was like, and I'm into heavy metal. And I was like, wait, what?
I forgot about that.
And I thought that was like the great, because, you know, when you're talking to people and you're talking primarily about Star Wars, sometimes their other interests can really surprise you. And that's one that just kind of blew me away.
No, he was the best. Like, what a great guy. What a gem of a man.
Should we dive into the data pad for this week?
I think so, yeah. So we usually do like an in the data pad, which is where we usually take like a topic that our guest brought up and we deep dive it. And then we have another segment where we talk about how we Star Wars for the week. This week, I feel like those kind of merged.
Yes. Yeah, I agree, because Mark had a really deep appreciation for Andor. And one of the things he said was kind of dead on, that Star Wars, in fact, it was like one of the top 3 things that makes Star Wars to him.
It was, yeah.
Was anticipation. Star Wars needs anticipation. And what's been, like, what have we been anticipating for like 3 years now? Andor Season 2.
And also, what Star Wars content has the most anticipation built in? Andor.
Yes. Yeah. So true.
So we thought we'd do like the combined, because this falls on the premiere week.
Yeah.
It's not normally the
April 24th right now when we're recording, in the Andor Season 2, Episode 1, 2, and 3 premiered Tuesday night. And yes, we're going to be late because this is going to air in like 2 weeks. So we're a little late to to the Andor review party, but we've got thoughts.
We've got thoughts. I think it's okay. Because we're not really going to... This is not normally the format of our show. We don't normally do like longer episode reactions and dissections.
That's true.
And I don't even feel like that's really what we intend to do right now. I think what we intend to do right now is talk about just kind of like where the story is.
Yes.
And our responses to even some of the fandom response.
Yeah. I do want to say, before we get into the deep stuff, I want to talk about B2 EMO.
Yeah.
And I posed this question on Twitter, and I honestly believe the writers have written him out. Like, that they were like, this is your end of the story, buddy, for you. And when Brazos said goodbye and said, hey, this woman's going to take care of you and you're going to have fun and she knows where your charger is and it's going to be great. I think that's the writers telling the audience, you're not going to see emo anymore. And it really depresses me. Like,
I know. I posted on my Instagram story. I was just like, but he's the love of my life. I was so sad.
But
I was so sad.
It's like, I don't know, because I'm just going to call it Arc 1 because I don't remember that, like, where it fell within the episodes. Probably episode 3. But it literally was like they just left the family dog behind.
They
really
did.
It like they rehomed him and abandoned him.
But I think they had to. I mean, he's not a battle droid.
He's not a battle droid. He's not even an astromech. He's not, like, the fact we were talking about it yesterday, I think. Texting back and forth, and you had mentioned, well, that's where his charger station is. It's like, how much charge? Like, is he an old iPhone that you need to charge?
I think he is.
I think so too.
I totally think he is. I think he's supposed to be like an older model of droid.
Yeah.
That, you know, they didn't intend to go very. Maybe it was even before interplanetary space travel. Like, who knows? Like, he has a charging station. I would love to know the history of Bees and his model's existence, but I am glad that they knew their audience well enough to know that they absolutely could not harm him in any way other than emotional harm. Otherwise, there would have been actual riots in the street.
Yeah, I think so.
Led by me. It was a loss. It was honestly one of the more significant losses that we've had so far. I don't think we'll see him again. It'll be interesting to know, because you're right, this doesn't come out for 2 weeks. So, like, what'll have happened? Because we'll be in 2 weeks when this episode hits. We'll be 1 week from the final arc.
Yes, but we will not have seen the third arc yet.
No, not yet. It'll be that night.
It'll be that night. It'll be tonight.
So we'll only be 1 arc behind. It'll be tonight.
I'm so present.
So meta.
Yeah.
No, but I think this is still good, because I think that I sometimes think it's good to go back and reflect on kind of the story's beginning as we continue down the road. So, like, for me, this 3-episode arc kind of had the primary thesis of who is in charge.
Oh, yes. 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 Oh, I like that.
Like, Cassian asks it many times.
Yes, he does.
And everyone else seems to kind of try to be figuring it out.
Yeah.
As well.
But I also love that it's also Mon Mothma trying to figure out, and Luthen, between the two, who's in charge. I mean, it's Luthen.
Absolutely.
But
it is Luthen, yeah.
But at the moment.
Yes, and their power dynamics do shift, and they did in season 1 as well.
Yes.
Yeah, totally true. I wanted to ask, first off, and again, I have to note here, because you mentioned B, but like, just like little moments that stood out. The opening to this arc had me in tears, like laughing. Like, the escape from the training facility going so wrong.
Yes.
I loved it. I loved that they were like, hey, you know what? Being a rebel is not always like a sexy, smooth escape. Like, sometimes you're quite literally breaking your way out.
It was such a...
By blowing holes in the wall.
To me, it was such a Han Solo escape, because everything that could go wrong went wrong. And like, from the very first, he's like gunning it and it just goes right into reverse. And that effect was so amazing, because you see his face go, what the fuck, as he's like flying backwards, but through the window of the TIE fighter. Oh, and by the way, that outfit, as soon as I saw that outfit on Diego Luna, I was like, I need that action figure. I want that action.
Dude, I had the same thought.
Figure. Oh my God.
Like, I need it. I need the ship that comes with it.
Yes.
I also I wanted to talk about Cassian's character as it stands right now. The interaction that he had with the training facilities operational kind of like worker. I don't know if she gave a name or I missed it. And kind of like the rallying cry that he gives her in such a like intimate moment between them.
Yes.
I felt like it spoke so much to like where he's at on his own journey, because this is a year after what happens in Ferrix.
Yes.
And it just really spoke to like, I think how much he's been reflecting on his position and everything. And he says something along the lines of like, you've stepped into yourself and that's the point. And it felt like he was talking about himself.
Yeah, so there was a more, like, I don't know if the scene confused me. I felt like there was a flirtation going on. And they set it up that way because, you know, they get interrupted and they're like, oh, the person who interrupted us said you're cute. Because there was a flirtation in a way, like he was seducing her into the rebellion. But at the same time, I think I was kind of misreading that. And it was more of exactly what you said, which is he has stepped into himself. Like when we were talking about Mask of Fear, I kept saying that Saw was practicing his pitch to try and get people to join the rebellion. What is it that he says that will activate people? And I think in this, we see that Cassian knows what to say. And because at one point, I think in that scene, he says, we can't let the Empire win. And I think what we're seeing is he's no longer kind of the street rat he was on Ferrix, but now a little more mature, a little more sure of himself, and he has a specific direction in which he's going.
Yeah, and I think you should, I don't think it's either or. I don't think you misread it. I think it's a yes and. I actually hadn't thought about this.
No, my sign says no.
But
my sign says no. That's good.
I really do. I think it's a yes and because I didn't think about this till you just said it. But, you know, another thing we see over this episode arc is Cassian's skill set as a operative, as a agent of the rebellion sharpening.
Yes.
And I think that he saw this girl. There was a moment where, you know, oh, my boss thinks you're cute and there's this awkward flirtation. I think he uses it as a tool.
Yes.
To reassure her that she's doing the right thing because it is a means to the end at the end of the day. And he knows she's not going to survive the night. And so it's a bit of a manipulation tactic, even if it's not a mean-spirited one. He knows that, like, that's the price. And so I don't think you read that wrong at all. I think I didn't pick up on that as being, like, part of what we were learning about his character in that moment, which is that, like, he's picking up intel and he's using it.
Yes. Yeah. And he's learning how, this may be a blunt way of saying it, he's learning how to manipulate people. He's learning how to say what he needs to say in order for them to kind of help him in his own journey. We see that with the other when he's on Yavin. What is it? What was that rebellious group called?
Oh, well, there's the Maya Pie Brigade.
Yes, the Maya Pie Brigade, which kind of makes me hungry for pie. But the Maya Pie Brigade, when he was taken by them, it was so obvious he knew how to lead because he was saying to them, you know what? You need to get water. You know what? We need to get food. You know what? They're doing this, so we need to do this. And the whole time, you've sensed them wanting to follow him, but not because they thought he was an Imperial pilot. And I think that just shows his growth.
Yeah, totally. And I saw a lot of like commentary online about, you know, people were kind of like, wow, like Cassian really didn't do much over this episode arc. And I was like, I think that was kind of the point. I think we were supposed to see that he is acting very strategically.
Yes.
He's recognizing that this is not going to be a quick burn. This is a slow, arduous process. He's sharpening all these skills. We're seeing it play out in these situations that he's finding himself in. It's very realistic that, you know, somebody who is essentially a spy would find themselves in situations that completely delay or derail original plans. You can't control the variables. Cassian's trying to argue with them that they're on the same side. He's offering very specific intel with the intent to create trust. And he calls them out when they just spill all their information and beans. He's like, you're not. He's like, that's on you. Like, sorry, you're not a good spy, which causes more conflict.
I'm going to go back. I'm going to take a step back and say something larger about Andor season 2 in general, where I feel like they're having more fun with it. Like they're adding more comedy. There's like no comedy in season 1. I mean, there's a little bit. There's like, but not like the escape scene, not like the rock, paper, scissors scene, not like a lot of the moments with the brigade before they go into the firefight is a little bit comedic. I feel like, and again, taking a step backwards, like Andor is stepping into a more confident phase where it wants to, for lack of a better term, it wants to have a little more fun. It wants to dig deeper into the emotional layers. They're really, I also get this sense that they're like, okay, fans really reacted to Mon Mothma kind of breaking down. Let's play into that. They really react to Luthen being kind of emperor-like, where he's like saying one thing as innocent little me, and then another thing as the most sinister person in the world, like Gollum. And let's really play that up. So I just feel like they're taking these confident steps into their storytelling. To go back to your question about these guerrilla fighters, I just think it also shows that the beginning of the rebellion is messy and messed up and confusing, and people, because I think Andor keeps saying, which rebellion, right? Doesn't he go, which rebellion?
I kind of forgot about that. That's true. He's like, wait, what rebellion are you fighting?
Yes.
He has two main questions. Who's in charge and what rebellion are you fighting? It's so true.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, I agree with you. I think it is supposed to demonstrate that. I felt like I had questions, especially when he deserts them, which it makes sense. He's on a mission. They're holding him back. They're not. Like, they're useless to him. They're not organized.
Should be
like
deserted. They like
absolutely like they can't fight their way out of a paper bag. But
they become cannon fodder for each other, much less the Empire.
They're all just going to get eaten by hippos. Let's move on. I don't know what that animal is. Somebody tell us on Twitter. My husband was like, "Oh, we have space hippos."
I think space hippos is what it's going to be from now on.
I had another question for us to pontificate on. I thought there was a lot of really good commentary in the fandom about kind of like the duality of story between like Mon Mothma particularly and like basically the women of Star Wars, like what's happening in the world based off of their position and status, like how they are having to survive and what risk looks like to them in their situation. Like that was a big part of this arc. In Mon Mothma's journey specifically, I'm curious because I felt like when I was reading kind of like fan reactions or recaps, it was very obvious to me who had read Mask of Fear and who hadn't in regards to what her character's going through right now.
Yes.
Did you feel the same way?
I don't know about fan reaction because I didn't look too deeply into fan reaction, but from my own personal viewpoint, I feel like Mask of Fear lent so much, not credence. I feel like Mask of Fear sets this up and makes you feel for her in a much deeper way than if you're just a voyeur, if you're just a viewer of like Return of the Jedi, Rogue One, and now Andor. Her emotional state is kind of broken in Mask of Fear, and that's right after the Empire takes over. So I think part of her journey is finding that strength, and that's why we're in this moment where she's kind of broken down. I really think her arc is going to be at the end like the phoenix rising from the flames.
Totally.
Even though she's a strong character throughout, she's going to become stronger. It's almost like Obi-Wan being struck down.
Totally. Yeah. I felt like there was a lot of kind of, I don't think that this reaction is wrong. I think this is exactly what the script was intending to portray, which is that, her situation and what risk looks like to her right now is very different than, say, someone like Bix.
Yes, yes.
We're talking about like polar opposite female experiences in war based off of their positions in power and in society and wealth. And so I think that there was a lot of commentary on like, oh, wow, like Bix is actively fighting for her life while Mon is planning a party.
But sorry, that got a response from me, apparently. The thing is, she's not just planning a party. She's planning the wedding of her daughter in order to create a rebellion. She is sacrificing her daughter to a criminal. Like, no, I mean, I don't know if the kid's a criminal, but her dad's the kid's dad's
the family.
The family.
What she's having to do.
Yeah.
And I don't think that nothing I read was like taking that away from the severity of the situation. It was more like the risk within opulence versus the risk within poverty.
Yes.
And like that dichotomy. And that's dead on. But I think it was also a little bit of yes and, because I think there was some kind of joking around like, this crash out that she has at the end of the episode where she just gets super drunk and dances to the point where her perfectly constantly pinned up hair is just a mess. And it's because obviously she's confronted with the fact that like, she's going to essentially also have blood on her hands. She can't stay political anymore. Like Luthen's basically said it to her face, like, oh, how nice for you that you don't know what I now need to do.
Yes.
And I'm going to tell you.
Yes.
In regards to Tay. But like, I think that I don't know. I felt like having Mask of Fear in my mind watching all of that. I think it just provided so much more context for why she crashed out so hard.
Yes, I totally agree with that.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I also can
that
see
the risk was a lot larger than was shown on screen. Yeah.
Yeah.
What do you want to hit next?
I don't know. Like, I feel like we have very kind of diverse notes where mine are kind of very shallow and yours are much deeper. Because one of the things I feel like struck me while watching it, well, I think, I don't know if this is the right place to say it, but I loved these episodes.
Oh, yeah.
I loved this arc. As I was watching it, I was like, I can't wait to watch it again. And since I've watched it, I've been like, I need to sit down and watch it again. And that always happens with, for me, the best Star Wars. I remember The Mandalorian Season 1. I watched like those episodes almost back to back. Skeleton Crew.
Yeah.
Watched it like twice. And then this one I really, really love. But one of the things that kind of hit me, and I think this goes along with my notes or thoughts about they're getting more confident in their storytelling and more comedic, like allowing themselves to have more comedic moments to play against the harsher moments. There's a lot of memeable moments too.
Yes.
Those 3 hours had probably like 10 memeable moments in it. And that's, I think, a lot. Like Cyril lying on the bed, even to my kind of like dumbass inability to see memes in media. I saw that and I was like, that is going to be a meme that everyone uses, and I was right. And not just
instantaneous.
Yeah, instantaneous.
With all the princesses from Disney laying on the bed the same way, I was dead. I was laughing
that is
so hard
funny.
on Twitter. Oh my god.
And then what Deidre standing up to the mother. There was the moment where Cyril says to his mom, you're dripping all over. And I don't know what was it like. They were having fondue and she was like eating it as messily as possible, and I don't know why. And I don't know why he said that. But I just knew that is something we're going to be living with for the rest of that. That's going to be like the hello there from Andor.
Oh, yeah. So, Cyril's crash out in this episode is absolutely going to be a meme forever within the fandom.
Yes.
And not to take away from the levity that you're trying to bring to this conversation, because I agree. I love that they leaned into comedy a little bit more in season 2. I really do, because Star Wars needs it. It needs comedy. We've talked about this a lot on the podcast. But, like, I also, like, the Deidre and Cyril having this like domestic as fuck side plot while everyone else is quite literally like fighting for their life and just in complete turmoil. giving such simplicity to their problems. It's like their biggest problem right now is his mother-in-law's passive aggression.
Yes.
I think it really spoke to like, the comfort you get to live in when you lean into a fascist regime or you lean into a systematic oppression. Like, if you are not the nail that's sticking up,
Yes.
that your biggest problems are the fact that your mother-in-law showed up and said to your new partner, well, you're not what I thought you'd look like. Like,
Oh my God! When like just before when Cyril goes into the bedroom, at that point you were ahead of me in watching it, and we were texting back and forth.
yes.
I so wanted to text to you. Please tell me Deirdre is going to slap down the mom at this point, and then Deirdre turns to her and just slaps her down, and I was like, yes.
Better to Phil. Yeah.
Yes.
No, but the way that they comedically communicated that to the audience is just the genius of Andor and a lot of Star Wars. I just thought that was,
And it is a really good counterpoint to what is happening around, because part of me while I was watching it was like, well, this feels odd. Like, this just feels like it doesn't fit in. But in the sense that it is the counterpoint of like, when you join the bad guys, you get to sit down and eat dinner and worry about the passive aggressive mother-in-law more than anything else. Good point.
Well, I want to say too, like, speaking of Deidre and her kind of story arc here, there's something brewing in the background. It's not come to fruition yet. We probably won't really see it play out until this next year's worth of arc, because I think they're jumping a year each time. I think the whole point was that it's going to be the 4 years leading to the Battle of Yavin or Yavin, however you choose to say it in the fandom. But like, there's this incredible scene that's taking place that is cut between the chaos over on Yavin 4.
Yep.
Where there's like, who's in charge? What is happening? There's this kind of like you said, there's this comedic like insurgent pod that doesn't know what the hell they're doing. And then you have the Empire sitting at round table also not really knowing what the hell they're doing. Like, he literally stands up and says to them, I was dying. I was texting you. I was like, he literally just stood up and said, under threat of death, what I'm about to show you can't leave this room.
Yes.
And then plays them a commercial,
Yes.
which like knocked me on my ass. I was laughing so hard that spiders are the backbone to Star Wars couture. That's just a side little hilarity. But there's something deeper and more sinister brewing here, and that there's resources there that they want, and how are they going to justify taking it, basically. And Deidre says something really interesting, which is that, they're having this argument over propaganda that's interspliced with the rebellion not knowing what rebels do you represent? All this stuff. No one knows what's going on. And Deidre says something really interesting. She says, propaganda is only going to take you so far. You need a radical insurgency, and you need rebels that you can depend on to do the wrong thing. And I almost fell off the couch. I was like, the writing in this show is so brilliant.
It's so good. And she's also right.
Well, I was going to say, should we jump to the Ferrix refugees and this unnamed wheat planet and what's happening with Brazo and Will and Bix and I don't know. Did we get introduced to Brazo's girlfriend? What's her name?
Oh, I don't know. I
was trying to figure it out, and okay, so Brazo's girlfriend, they're on this, they're undocumented refugees.
Yes, on the wheat planet, and they're there to help.
And they've been there
harvest.
for a year. Is what we're supposed to take away from that. I believe,
and it felt as though Andor or Cassian was using that as kind of a home base. He'd go out on missions and then go back to the planet where his family is.
Yeah, and the severity of their situation. I mean, they're realizing there's this threat coming in. Basically, ICE is coming in to verify residency, citizenship. They're looking at everyone's papers. There's all this kind of like underground shuffling that's going on. And there's this like a greater understanding that like, yeah, this is a necessary job. We know that a lot of the people here are essentially undocumented and that that's just like kind of par for the course. And it was very much a mirror up to our current society, for sure. Andor was not pulling punches on this episode arc. Like, it wanted you to feel uncomfortable. It wanted you to see ourselves in this narrative, for sure.
Definitely.
And there's a lot of politics at play there. And I think it kind of culminates in that scene.
Yeah.
The scene that I think everyone knows what we're referencing. And I think it was foreshadowed in the introduction to them being on this planet. We first meet them during a nightmare Bix is having, where the man that tortured her is coming back to get her, but she's in bed. He's pulling back the blankets. There's something far more sinister lurking.
Yes.
In terms of what's at risk for her autonomy and her person. I thought it was foreshadowed really well.
Oh, yeah. It's like that moment, as well as the first time the Imperial officer sees her, he's all like Captain Hands on her. Like, and let me rephrase that. He's all Captain Creepy on her. Like, hey, you want to go to the barn dance with me? Why don't you come over to the town? It's not far away. He's just really kind of, he brings it on hard.
Thick.
Creepy. Thank you.
And she has to do what a lot of women have to do in situations like that, which is that, oftentimes somebody who's pushing the boundary in that way responds better or more favorably to some sort of a male figure in the way versus just the word no. And she has to say, like, she has to create a husband out of Cassian in order to try to protect herself from what she knows is lurking. And I thought this was so well written because anytime you have state-sanctioned violence, control, there's a marginalization, there's a heightened hyper-masculine kind of ideals around wartime, there's occupation, like you have sexual assault. And what's often, I think, more at risk, not always, but what's often more at risk for women is so different than what's at risk for men. And I think that they did this narrative really well, which in that, like, at the end of it, the worst possible thing that I think was probably on Brazo's mind was his demise, and that happened. And I guarantee you the worst possible thing on Bix's mind wasn't death. It was some form of invasion is the word I probably will use. It's so reflective of women in that position everywhere that death is probably not actually the biggest fear. It's actually what Bix went through. And I'm definitely projecting an assumption onto the characters in which, like, what they probably like feared most. But I think it is representative of what men and women do tend to fear most in wartime.
I will, from my limited, I agree with you. I think, and I think when we're talking about Bix specifically, the writers, the directors, the creators are all, I think, backing that in that foreshadowing that you're talking about, because that is what's scaring the bejesus out of her. That is her biggest terror. You don't have it being putting that helmet of the sad songs of the dying children on. It's what you said is the sheets are being pulled off of her while she's asleep, and something bad is happening.
It's interesting because, there's been a lot of commentary in the fandom.
Yeah.
That invasion. It's interesting because there's been some commentary that's like, does this or does this not belong in Star Wars? And I think that's actually an important conversation in terms of like how it's handled in Star Wars. But to say that it hasn't existed in Star Wars and shouldn't is kind of wild to me when, like, it always has been there. In the peripheral. Yeah,
so there's always, like, first of all, there's always a violence against the weaker, against the weak, whether it's physically weak or politically weak. There's always been, there's that sense of invasion in The Force Awakens when Kylo enters Rey's mind. That's a very, like, it's not
it's
sexual,
violating.
but it's a violating scene. And then
Mhm.
you have Leia as Hut Slayer.
I literally was just about to say, like, one of the most famous Leia costumes.
Yes.
She's literally chained like a dog with a collar around her neck. He is touching her profusely without consent. And
Yeah.
we're introduced as the audience to this situation that Leia's in, this violating position that Leia's in, as Jabba is quite literally discarding his previous victim. And you're going to tell me sexual assault's not present in Star Wars?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, like, he's discarding his previous victim. She's of no longer use to him. He is a shiny new toy. I mean, my God. Like, yes, it's more on the peripheral. It's not what Andor's doing to you right now, which is like, no, you're going to sit in this uncomfortability. You're going to be forced to watch it play out for many minutes on screen, and you're going to have to contend with the fact that this is the reality. That is the thesis of Andor. It is raw, it's political, it's real, it pulls no punches. And so I think you can't really, I don't know, I don't think you can say that about this show in particular. I really don't.
Yeah, and we were talking earlier, and it's like, well, you could say that about Skeleton Crew, but the thing with Star Wars right now, Star Wars today is kind of on a spectrum where you have, I think tonally, the prequels are slightly different than the original trilogy.
Mm-hmm.
And then I think Boba Fett is different from the sequel trilogy. Even though they all kind of grow from the same thing, there's kind of I always like to say that there's no genre in Star Wars. Well, maybe there's like no tone, like no set tone as well, because Star Wars, to tell the story, needs to constantly grow and evolve and expand. Star Wars started out as a fairy tale. And what happens with a fairy tale when you start getting into detail, it stops becoming a fairy tale and starts becoming more of a realistic story, maybe. Because you take any fairy tale, I'm going to take Little Red Riding Hood. Little Red Riding Hood comes across a wolf on her way to her grandmother's house. She goes to the house. The wolf's there. Wolf eats her. Or the hunter comes and kills the wolf. Now, that's a fairy tale, pretty simply told. And that's what I think the original trilogy is. But if you keep telling that fairy tale over and over, who cares? You've heard the story. You've heard about how the farm boy comes from nothing, joins with the prince, rescues the princess, and defeats the evil empire. Well, now you have to get into detail then to evolve it. And that's what we're doing with Andor. I think that's what we're doing with the sequel trilogy. It's getting a little, like, that black and white is going away and you're getting more grays. And I think that's what Andor's whole point is. It's more of an adult show. I turned this into a lecture series, and I apologize. I didn't mean to.
No, I have so many thoughts. I'm loving this. If really keep going.
But you go into, now we're getting into Andor, which is basically, this is what war is. This is how you start a rebellion. This is how you fight. This is what fascism looks like when it's boots on the ground destroying planets.
Yeah.
And when you get into that, then you kind of have to get into all of it. And unfortunately, that power dynamic is, regardless of whether you can, whether you say that the command at the top doesn't believe in it, that doesn't matter because the command at the top's not there. And the reality is the command at the top is not always there to say, hey, do this, don't do that.
Yeah.
Weak-minded people feel that violence against others is power. And that's what they're going to do. And that's why weak-minded people end up in a position of power, because they're willing to do that.
Yeah.
So
that was so well said. I have so many thoughts. It's interesting, Little Red Riding Hood, because if you think about that story, it is a young girl lost.
Yeah.
Her grandmother's murdered. A quite literal metaphor for a wolf in sheep's clothing.
Yes.
Answers the door, pretending to be somebody who's safe. And harms her.
Yeah.
And that's also a very female story. And so, like in terms of the violation that a lot of women go through and fear in life. And so, it's a little bit more on the peripheral. Unless you're, really diving into the nuance of that, you're not necessarily taking it for what it is.
Yes.
And that's what's happening here, I think, with this particular narrative arc when it comes to Bix's story, is that, like, I want to back up a little bit. Like, you made also a really good point, too, about how, because like I had a lot of thoughts and I didn't write them down. Star Wars has always responded to our current political climate. And I think you're right that the original trilogy, it was much more subtle. It was much more fantasy. It was a little bit more escapism. But the prequels were, and I think George Lucas himself has been open about this. Correct me if I'm wrong, but that it was a commentary on the Bush administration.
Yes.
And you got a little bit more serious themes out of that. I think that it is a response to our current political climate, which is, and I think a little bit too, like our social media climate, like how often what's happening in the world is on our radar. This is the first time, I think, in our lives where we have such immediacy and on the ground information from, like, witness point of view. And it's really heightened everyone's understanding of things. It's heightened emotion around everything. So yeah, it makes sense that Andor is like, no, we're not going to allow those themes to be in the peripheral anymore. We're going to force you to sit down in what's uncomfortable. We're going to tell you the truth of war. We're going to tell you the truth of fascism. We're going to tell you what an ecosystem of systematic oppression looks like. And guess what? You're going to have to be uncomfortable because it's going to include a female story too.
So that's what Star Wars means to us this week.
Next week, we're talking to Juan Montes. Juan's a journalist and a photographer. He's a broadcast and Emmy-nominated producer. He's also a friend of the pod. We always love having friends on the show. We have a really fun discussion with him.
I just turned into a teen girl. Yeah.
You did. You kind of were like, yeah, we had a friend on. It was very cute. We have a really fun discussion with Juan about his Star Wars journey as a prequel kid, but also like about the importance of Star Wars as cinema, which weirdly I feel like kind of goes well with our conversation we just had. So tune into that and subscribe and rate our show. Dave, do you want to tell people?
Yeah, like we always say, please give us a 5-star rating if you're enjoying the show, or share it with a friend. And if you want to get in on the conversation, join us on socials. At Star Wars Mean to You. That's at Star Wars Mean, the number 2 and the letter U.
Right on. Well, may the force be with you, Dave. Thank you for this. This is a heavier topic than we usually touch, and I really enjoyed that, actually. I think that, because you and I, not to like add on more here, it's just like you and I were talking about, but to add on more here, you and I were talking about before we hit record that, that scene didn't necessarily stick out to us as particularly like shocking in the way that I think the fandom was discussing it as being shocking.
Yes, I think
like,
we had...
obviously it's a shocking scene, but, we both were like, wow, that makes sense with what's going on. And it wasn't until we saw the fan reaction that we were like, oh, we should probably like dissect this a little bit more. I think some people, not everyone, obviously, might be missing the bigger picture and the bigger point. So exactly. I really appreciated that.
No, it was a great conversation, and I enjoy being able to talk about these issues. I don't know if I enjoy talking them through the lens of Star Wars. That sounds weird. But I like being able to talk about these issues in a safe space, and I feel like this is a safe space with you. So so thank you.
It is. It's a really well. Thank you. Oh my God, I appreciate that. And ditto.
This is usually what we're texting back and forth.
Yeah, this is you're basically getting a glimpse into Dave and I's just like text. It's this and or like just memes of ongoings in the Star Wardom. May the force be with you.
May the force be with you.
Oh, Binks, do you want to record an episode with us, Binks?
Jar Jar Binks.
I know he is. He's Jar Jar Binks.
Yes.
Oh, and now you shut up. This is like the one time you don't speak. I know.
Oh,
I was named after the Binks in Hocus Pocus.
Oh, well, that hurts a little bit.
And Paulo named him, not me.
This may be the hidden scene.
Yes, it is. Welcome to our episode. Sorry, I just was choking. I'm going to take that again. I literally was like, I can roll into this. No, I still have a cough in my throat.
I thought you were going to pull it off. I was like, she's going to stick the landing. And then
Nope.
Nope, she didn't. She had a frog in her throat. A flog?
Frog?
A frog? We've been speaking for the last 45 minutes. I have absolutely no reason for why I can't talk. Okay.